He is a World Series champion. He's a former New York Yankee. He joins us every Wednesday thanks to Red Wing Shoes. Jim Leyritz. Jim, thanks for taking the time with us this evening as always. And I got to start off with this. Greg Bird, his first and second career home runs today. What did you heard about this player before you joined the Yankees? Did you expect this type of performance?
Well, you know what? I saw him play in the Arizona Fall League this over the winter, and he's one of the guys that Brian Cashman said that they didn't want to trade and they didn't want to get rid of because they had some pretty high hopes for him. And here he is. He steps in right at the right time when Teixeira gets hurt and needs a couple of days off. Has a career day, and the first 2 home runs that he hits. It was I'm sure a pretty big day for the young kid.
I joked around a little earlier in the show about there's a lot of Greg Bird fans, it seems like, on social media. I was calling him the flock. And if he continues to have this hot bat in the lineup with guys like Mark Teixeira struggling a bit, although he's injured, and A-Rod struggling, it's going to be harder and harder for Joe Girardi to take him out of the lineup. If you're Joe Girardi, how do you handle this for the next 2 to 4 weeks with somebody like Greg Bird?
Well, you have to hope the kid can play some outfield. That he can play a couple other little positions where you can get him that playing time, get him an opportunity to keep playing, and you just have to find a time. Like you said, what happened right now was an opportunity, and the best thing that Greg Bird can do is continually just put the pressure on Joe Girardi to have to play him. And believe me, I know where Bird is at right now. I've been there. And, it's one of those things that when Don Mattingly got hurt and Mike Stanley would get hurt, I'd come in and hit 400. And then as soon as they were ready to come back, I had to kind of take a back seat. But you always stay ready. And when you get that opportunity, you perform. And like I said, the kid did pretty good today.
And Tom Gozlowski, Goz filling in for Armen Levack today here on 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. And joining us on the phone lines, thanks to Red Wing Shoes, Jim Leyritz. And Jim, let's get in the time machine a little bit now. Let's think back to your first career Major League Baseball home run. What do you remember about that?
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't have the same experience, because the first time I hit 2 home runs in a game, my first home run, I hit 2 home runs in a game. It was back in Chicago. First one was off Melito Perez. The second one was off a guy named Ken Patterson. The next day was the Andy Hawkins no-hitter game that I dropped. So you got to be careful. You get too high, get too low. But, again, I watched this guy play. He's a kid that they've been talking about that they didn't want to get rid of. They felt like he had a high upside, and he's stepping in at the right time under the right conditions to be able to show Joe Girardi that in a tough position you can put him in there and he'll perform. So we'll see what happens.
And for those who may not know, that Andy Hawkins game that Jim's referring to was 1990. Andy Hawkins finishes the game with a no-hitter. But in rare fashion, his team actually loses that game because of certain things that happen in the field and things like that. And you touch on Eovaldi, who was on pace today for a no-hitter. He had a strong outing. And when you're in a situation like that, is there more pressure on guys in the outfield than on the infield than the actual pitcher on the mound where a no-hitter's possibly going to get finished off?
Yeah, I mean, he was doing well. It was a little too early to kind of to get too crazy. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, you start to feel around the 5th, 6th inning, okay, something's happening here. And, as a fielder, as an outfielder, you don't want to be that guy that makes that mistake or doesn't get a good jump on the ball. And sure enough, in Andy Hawkins' game, it was Mike Blowers first, Jim Leyritz second, and Jesse Barfield third. So we had 3 guys screw up at the same time. So yeah, you don't want to be that one guy.
And, Jim, one of the big stories from this week involving the Yankees was also involving one of their pitchers. Mitchell, the line shot back to him, unfortunately hits him in the face. And you may have been in situations before in your career where you've seen a line shot right back to the pitcher, and more people are trying to figure out ways to protect the pitcher. What can Major League Baseball really do with the situation going forward? Can they do anything to help try to save these pitchers and avoid those plays in the future?
No, you know what? Those are chance happenings. They do happen in the game, unfortunately. It doesn't happen. You think about the amount of pitches that are thrown and the amount of pitches that are hit. It doesn't happen that often. But when something like this happens, we get into that discussion of, what can we do? Can we? Somebody mentioned the other day that Torres, who wears that hat for the Mets, that hat would have done him no good. It's more of the face. And unless you're going to put a hockey mask on them or a hockey, one of those clear plastic, shields over them, you're really not going to stop this. And every once in a while we're going to have this thing happen. But again, you look at the amount of times that the pitch is thrown and the pitch is hit. It's a rare occurrence for stuff like this to happen.
It really is. With over 2,000 games played in a regular season, with so many at-bats, with so many situations, the percentage of this happening is very, very low. And I'm with you. It's very difficult for Major League Baseball to try to find a resolution for this. Tom Gozlowski-Gons filling in for Armen and Levack today on 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. Jim Leyritz joins us on the phone lines thanks to Red Wing Shoes. And Jim, another New York Yankee made history this past week. Brian McCann became the first Yankee to drive in 5 runs and throw out 3 base runners on the base pass. First in Major League Baseball to do that since 2003. When you were behind the plate, was there a guy on the base pass that used to smile and say, okay, I hope this guy tries to take off on me. I want to try to gun this guy out at second or third?
Yeah, Kenny Lofton.
Yeah, Kenny Lofton. Okay, the former Indian.
I wanted Kenny Lofton, and I eventually got him. But yeah, Kenny Lofton was one of them, and of course Ricky Henderson was the other one. And unfortunately, I think I only was caught twice or 3 times when Ricky was actually in the game. I never got a chance to throw him out. But yeah, every now and then you get those base stealers. And back in the day, that's when we had the Vince Coleman's when I was playing. There's not those big base stealers like we used to have. But yeah, I mean that the day McCann had the other day was a pretty impressive day.
Now, you say those are the guys you wanted to have on the base pass. Now, I'm starting to think your answer for this next question might be the slow guys. Was there ever a guy on first or second that you hope didn't run on you?
Yeah, well, the only one I could think back to my day of playing was Bob Hamlin. If Bob Hamlin could steal a base off me, and Andy Pettitte, we'd be in big trouble.
and you bring up Andy Pettitte and Andy Pettitte Day coming up later on this month at Yankee Stadium. There was some talk about an invitation and things like that. What is the situation involving Andy Pettitte Day and yourself?
Well, I got a little sore spot there. I have not been invited, and I've been told by the woman who runs it, who picks people, that the name was never brought up, the name was never mentioned. I find that hard to believe, but if that's what she says, that's what she says. And, it's a little disappointing, especially for the 2 years that I had. Andy was 95 and 96. 95, of course, he had been throwing to Mike Stanley and wasn't comfortable. I took over. We went 9-3 together at the end of 95. And then I think in 96, he went 21-7 that year. And I think together we were 19-6, I think, that year. So, and then, of course, all of the playoff games and World Series games that I caught with him pitching, and especially Game 5 of the 96 World Series, which I think to this day has gone down as one of the greatest pitch games, both by John Smoltz and by Andy Pettitte in World Series history. So a little disappointed that the name wasn't mentioned, and I'm sure I'm going to find Andy and make a mention to him that was my name ever brought up, and if it wasn't, I'm going to be a little disappointed. But
just to clarify, you and Andy had not talked up until that point. You have not reached out to Andy Pettitte weeks in advance or any time before that.
No, because I honestly didn't think. I thought it was kind of a no-brainer. And then about a week ago, I reached out and wrote an email to the woman that runs the thing, and I received a phone call back saying that that my name was never brought up, and they never considered that I was much of Andy Pettitte's career. So I thought that was a little odd, but at the same time, that's their choice. And I always told people that it's not going to change the fact of the 2 years that I caught him and the 2 years that I had an opportunity to win some playoffs and World Series games with him.
And Jim, we'll get you out of here on this. I know you're always busy. What's coming up this upcoming weekend for you?
Well, I'm here working. I'm here working for the Yankees, and again, just watching these guys continually win series, which is what their goal is right now, is to just keep winning series. And, they got a pretty tough stretch coming up over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll see what happens. I mean, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a fun time. I think these guys have a good chance of winning it. It really just depends on how hot Toronto continues to play, and we'll see what happens.
Jim, I lied. I actually have one more question for you. Did you bump into our man, Armen Williams?
Yes, I did. We saw each other today. There's a lot of people down from Albany that came down on the bus, and some of the sponsors, some of the people that help us put our shows on. And yeah, it was great to see them, and it was funny because I had watched the first 5 innings in the suites, and he's texting me, "Come on out, come on out." Well, I broke tradition of the no-hitter was going on. I by the time I left Suite 33 and went to the Audi section, we gave up 2 runs, and it was a 2-2 tie, and it was one of those things. I got there and I said, "Listen, I think maybe I might have to go back to the suite."
No.
Yes.
So there we go. Yankee fans, please send all your things to Jim Leyritz. He's the one who blew the no-hitter today for the Yankees, not Evaldi.
but the good thing, when I continue to stand with him, Greg Bird hit his second home run to put us up 4-3, so I felt a little bit better.
Yes. We'll give you the credit for that. We'll give you credit for the Yankee win then today. Jim Leyritz, World Series champ, former New York Yankee. You can catch him every Wednesday right here on Armen and Levack. Thanks to Red Wing Shoes. Jim, thank you so much. We'll talk again next week.
All right, man. Good talking to you.